Welcome back to another episode of Mindful Drawing. I'm Rooks is Fun, and I'll be your guide here in these exercises into using drawing as an entrance into meditation and mindful practice. Today I'm inspired by a recent trip up to Maine, where we got to do some nice hiking and just be out in the woods and reconnect a little bit to that calm, cooler air that permeates through the trees and branches and kind of creates its own rhythm and sway into the world. A little disconnection to reconnect back with the self for a few moments. And that wispy, feathery filigree of the trees, the depth of space, layering upon layering, filling in our visual field, gradually blurring out the horizon, inspired me to bring that into the realm of technique, to use it as a space of meditation, and to guide the hand of expression as we look for creativity from within ourselves. So if you think it'd be interesting to do a little bit of a drawing meditation on the trees in the forest, grab a pen or pencil and a pad of paper that you'd like to draw with, and let's draw together. We'll keep it simple in terms of finding technique and just pay our attention into crafting of a kind of stroke or line, starting from the very small and building up to a very large. But as a quick warm-up, we'll use a sheet or something just to get the hands ready and the body in position and make sure we're sitting somewhere comfortable and steady, ready to let our attention be in the space of the drawing and not too distracted by our environment. I'm going to begin with just a few horizontal lines across the page, drawing pretty slowly, letting the pencil bump and move over whatever texture might be there on the paper. And you get a feel for the comfort of that speed, to have some attention to the wobbliness of those first few lines, to think about how to hold the pen or pencil in a way that has firmness and control, but it can also be light and fluid in its movement. An engagement with the wrist and the fingers. So you begin to practice not dragging our hand across the paper too much, but if it happens while we draw, just to have some attention and awareness to the places of contact, the little finger or the kind of pad of the palm, the full side, and knowing that elevating the hand and bringing the arm in as kind of more a mechanical extension is a useful technique for avoiding smudging and smearing and consistency of line. But as we get tired, it tends to happen, or we're in a position where it's hard to hold the whole arm out there. So finding balance with it. And after a few of these horizontal lines, maybe taking one or two final ones that really flow with the breath, breathing in at the beginning, and letting it smoothly extend across the page as the breath folds out. And if you need to breathe in again, feel free at any time along there. And one more, bringing the speed and the breath together. And the horizontal will be the establishing stroke of our longer exercise. Just anywhere on an open sheet of paper, finding one moment to divide the page horizontally. So one continuous line flowing across at some height, wherever it feels right or comfortable. And once we've established that horizontal Begin working in another direction with the stroke, close to the line, below it, or even right on it. Just some quick points and flicks or extensions upward. They can have a little wobble, a little dance, and move kind of organically and freely from anywhere in a close distance on or near that horizontal. Beginning to work across the page, jumping around or in sequence. Just bringing some attention to that quicker release of ink or graphite out on the page, letting some of the searching for choice of where the pen or pencil might go next become a quick action, almost an automatic action, engaging the paper and moving the pencil to just stretch out a little bit of a line there in the vertical direction, populating this narrow band of horizontal, these little flicks of the wrist, extensions of the arm from the elbow, looking into how you find some control and start to discover or develop your own technique here in the act of bringing some formation to the line, each one a little different, each one standing out as something slightly unique in location, in the subtle misalignments of where we might put down the pen or pencil, and a new direction from our orientation, our movement, the interaction there of the pen or pencil on the page. As that line begins to fill, we can start expanding further down from it to extend further over it in the horizontal, beginning to spread that vertical territory in the space below and extend the action that we're finding in the production of the stroke. And the density on the paper may grow. We might find more searching, more of the eye trying to find the space for the next extension of the point up into space. And it may even make sense to close the eye for a bit, or just let them drift into a less focused state, not to wrestle with that visual interpretation too much. But if it serves as a nice guide, and to open up to it and see where it's placing the next marks. Just continuing to fill in this density extending from below and up to above the horizon. As we work down from that first division of the page, we work further up as well, letting these blades of grass or small wispy trees stretch from the landscape under that horizon up into the space of our vision in the sky. Many lines may glide, overlap, repeat, or just merge together. Small clumpings of patterns to where we place the starting stroke, or the distance and orientation of our line can begin to become our focus in that awareness space. That we bring a presence to our action without overly falling into an urge to control it. Here in the drawing, often I can find that in repetition, if a line doesn't turn out how my forethought imagined it, coming back and working over it again, blending it and blurring it out from an initial preconception into its own existing on the space. Other things to bring the attention to are the orientations or inflections to the curves that you begin to draw. Preferencing a direction, perhaps from the orientation of your sitting. And if you find a strong arc in one way, for me tending to come from the right through to the left and back out, bring awareness to it, continuing it, exaggerating it, or bringing variety into it, letting it be one of many starting places, finding something in that rapid repetition of technique that can become a bit of a space of practice. A field, these extending, freezing blades of lines, continuing to expand further towards our presence in the horizontal, that horizon we occupy so often with our vision, of moving through our gravity-bound condition on a large surface. And you can spend some time as the strokes have become more intense, larger movements to them, to connect that movement and breath together in the body. Breathing in to find a starting location, letting the breath follow out with the stroke. If it's a quick, smooth release, or maybe a more slow, flowing, kind of featherly stroke, and finding whatever that expression is that both informs the act of the drawing as well as the outcome. The action may begin to slow down, and the in-breath finding location, a harmony between that rhythm of ourselves, exchanging our environment from inside to out, regulating our oxygen balance to fuel the muscles that engage in this action. And with the composition or the page gaining some intensity or fill to it, you might work a bit back and forth, in and out from that position of relaxation and connection between the breathing and the motion of the hand and the expression of the stroke. Some light fill into the far distance, compressing at that horizontal division on the page. Cycling forward and backward in the time space of the drawing. Elements from the beginning with new attention, with a new density and visual context. I start to notice the weight or influence of that first horizontal stroke, dividing space, establishing a familiarity with our occupation of the world, looking out through depth, things further blurring, compressing, gathering around to emphasize that transition from ground to sky, from our establishment of place and ground into the expanse, into imagination. It's a lot of repeated movement, repeated extension and contraction of the arm, the hand, compression and opening of the fingers as they oscillate through some dynamic control. It might be a bit of time to stretch them out, give them a little bit of a rest, maybe even switch hands for a different engagement. In that rest, giving your shoulders and back a little bit of attention, as that repetition causes the same nerves and same muscles to continually fire in a narrow range, and some tension to build up. But if you can, while taking a pause or continuing to draw, reach your attention into that space of the shoulder blades and the arms extension. And with a few breath strokes, let that attention release any muscular fatigue or buildup in that upper back and shoulder area. Switching hands for me helps to reduce the continued aggravation of just those small movements and realign some of the attention to a new location as the awkwardness and some discomfort of working with the secondary hand draws in new parts of the brain, continues to challenge precision. and intention with that physical randomness, the influence of the paper, or of subtle mismovements becoming more apparent. And if you do move to an offhand or the other hand, fatigue may build up more quickly, as it's not our usual practice in the finer motions. Keep the attention there. Let it build to a point of awareness, and then, just like the other hand, giving it space to relax through some breath and through a switching back. With this large field forming, maybe light, young trees like the aspens or the hairs on something's head. You can now begin to read into that space, continuing to modulate the compression towards that horizontal and that expansion out into our field, engaging more closely with the positioning of ourself to the paper. We begin to maybe find some detail, slowing it down, thickening, intensifying through overlay and repetition, some of these stronger elements in the foreground. Letting that processing of the background imagination chip in a little and layer over what is a collection of repeated strokes with something that could be seen, could be imagined. Something existing from influence and memory, or something new in the patterns emerging onto the paper. As the drawing approaches our position here outside the page, but divided ground and sky, or lower and upper half, the elements in the near range begin to take on detail of more line, more intensity, thickness or repetition, or detail and shading, contour and expression. Beginning to establish a visual territory in that foreground that works in balance with the density and compression of the territory towards the horizon, that denser zone of smaller filigree elements, blurred by their repetition. Can the foreground become also a blur of visual influence through the expression of detail, of interpretation? Braiding, wrapping, overlaying through the space of the paper. Take just a couple minutes of quiet to draw and look into what's emerging there, to branch and extend and occupy. And wherever you are, drawn in deeply to the density of the forest, or wearing out in the repetition and the blurring of the eyes. Bring your breath to a last few strokes, just to bring back some of that alignment. Bring the hearing and the sense of touch into that expansion of the rib cage, the sinking of the shoulders, the sharper drawing in, and the whoosh of the exhalation. And as you bring the drawing to a close with these breaths, just establishing some posture, maybe rolling the shoulders a tad to bring some ease to them and let those muscles squeegee out everything they built up. And let out one final releasing breath. Just let it drift with the paper and the stroke. That brings us to the conclusion of another practice here in the Mindful Drawing series. We've made it up to about 70 now, and each week is an interesting and exciting challenge to reflect on what's happening around me and the other creative endeavors I'm working on, and then translate that into something more open, more broadly applied, accessible with the technique, and adaptable in what might come out of our each individual creative pursuits. But doing this together, joining as one mind for a little while, maybe finding some pattern in our shared breath, our shared action, and our shared awareness or attention to that moment of creating any part of the expression of some kind of drawing. So I hope you're enjoying the exercises and maybe finding some new techniques or new creative inspiration from them, or at least getting a few moments to relax and just let some activity here in front of us absorb us, take us on a journey, and then leave us off with a little bit more relaxation and creativity at play in our lives. If you do like it, please give it a thumbs up below, share it with your friends, and let me know what you think in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And if you're interested, these are always held live through Mindful Pratt via Zoom link on the calendar there that you can find at mindfulpratt.org. I invite you to join me each week as I try to get up a new episode with a new technique and a new outcome, something to keep us inspired and keep the creativity flowing through this act of mindful drawing. Thank you very much, and whatever you're doing for the rest of the day, draw well. This is Brooks is Fun, signing off. Thank you.